This is the last moment of Lucy Gordon. 2 days before her 29th birthday, on a quiet spring day in Paris, she chose a silence no one had seen coming. While the world knew her as the radiant reporter from Spider-Man 3, she carried a hidden weight that neither fame nor red carpets could lift. She was young, beautiful, talented, and had just completed the role of her life. Jane Birkin, the legendary muse of Serge Gainsbourg. The film that could have launched her to new heights became a swan song, a tragic farewell wrapped in celluloid. Her passing stunned not only friends and family, but also Hollywood and the European film industry. There were no scandals, no signs, just 2 letters, one for her parents and one outlining her final wishes, filling a painful silence with words of love. But what could have led Lucy to this farewell? Was it the pressure of the spotlight? The loneliness of a life stretched between London, New York, and Paris? Or was it something else, something no outsider could have ever imagined? In this story, we uncover what truly unfolded behind Lucy Gordon's smile. We'll explore her childhood, her rise to fame, the role that touched her deeply, and that fateful day in May 2009. What began as a dream, a girl from Oxford adored around the world, ended in a mystery that still raises questions. Prepare for a journey of glamour, melancholy, and a silence that speaks louder than 1,000 words. Who was Lucy Gordon? And why does her story continue to move people even years after her passing? Lucy was born in the historic city of Oxford, known for its academic prestige. Far removed from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, she grew up surrounded by books, school routines, and quiet dreams. But behind that calm backdrop was a young woman with a striking presence, noticed by a talent scout during a visit to a fashion expo with her mother. That brief moment would change the course of her life forever. At just 15, she became a model for CoverGirl. Within months, her face appeared on the covers of international magazines like Glamour and Elle. Soon after, she moved to New York and later Paris in search of something deeper than beauty. Meaning, the early 2000s were a time when young women in the spotlight were celebrated and quietly consumed. The rise of tabloids, instant fame, and online culture turned celebrity into something volatile, fragile. Lucy walked that thin line. She had the talent, the look, the voice, but also a sensitivity that wasn't always understood. Her film career took off with roles in Perfume, The Four Feathers, and eventually Spider-Man 3. Hollywood seemed to welcome her, and yet something kept her from fully breaking through. Then came the opportunity to play Jane Birkin in Gainsbourg, Vie Héroïque. It wasn't just another acting job, it was a deep, complex role. Birkin wasn't only a fashion icon. She was a woman of passion, heartbreak, and deep emotional struggles. Lucy threw herself into the part, some say too much. She was living in a modest apartment in Paris 10th arrondissement when the true theme of her story began to unfold silently. The hidden cost of vulnerability in a world obsessed with perfection. To the public, Lucy remained the elegant actress with the graceful smile. But behind closed doors, something had begun to shift. She felt torn between 3 countries, England, America, and France, without truly belonging anywhere. Her rhythm faded. Her support network thinned. And even at the height of her career, just after wrapping her most emotionally demanding role, a quiet void remained, one that no spotlight could reach. Lucy's story is one of beauty, talent, and international success, but also of loneliness, unspoken struggles, and a final silence that no one was prepared for. In this video, we uncover that duality because behind every applause, There is sometimes a voice no one heard, and behind every role a human being. Lucy's career began like a modern-day fairy tale, discovered as a teenager. She quickly rose to international modeling fame and transitioned into acting with what seemed like effortless grace. Her first major film role was in Perfume, 2001, which immediately put her on the radar of film directors. Soon after, she starred alongside Heath Ledger in The Four Feathers, where her natural charm and emotional sensitivity were noted. In 2007, she appeared in Spider-Man 3, a global box office hit. Although her role was small, she shared the spotlight with A-list stars and stood proudly on the red carpet, her smile warm, captivating lit-up magazines and interviews. But behind that smile, something was stirring. Lucy rarely spoke about her private life. She gave interviews. Yes, but always reserved. Always measured. She kept a clear boundary between her public image and her personal world, a boundary that, while admirable, may have turned into a wall. After Spider-Man, Lucy moved permanently to Paris, the city of lights, art, and romance. There, she found space to breathe, create, and love. She lived with her partner, a French cinematographer. From the outside, everything looked ideal. But even Paris can feel lonely when your heart is full of unanswered questions. When she was cast as Jane Birkin in Gainsbourg, Vie Héroïque, she felt truly recognized, not just as a pretty face, but as a real actress. Birkin was not a simple role. It required grace, depth, the ability to show pain without words. Lucy poured her entire soul into it. According to some, perhaps too much. And with that deep immersion came old emotions, doubts, memories, wounds that had long been buried. During filming, she became quieter, and not sad. Exactly, but distant, as if she were drifting inward, lost in thoughts no one else could see. Some days she sparkled. Others, she seemed far away. Colleagues thought it was part of her method. But maybe it was more than that. After the shoot, she began to withdraw. She stopped traveling, stopped calling. Friends in England noticed she was harder to reach. Her life grew quieter, slower, as if she was pressing pause on something she never planned to resume. Then, something happened. A close friend of hers, young, creative, and like Lucy, died unexpectedly. The official explanation: a tragic incident. But Lucy took it deeply to heart. And she didn't speak about it, but something in her dimmed. In the weeks that followed, she became more introspective. She wrote often. She updated her will. She called her parents more never with alarming words. Just more frequently, as if she was quietly preparing to say goodbye. On the evening of May 19, 2009, Lucy had dinner with her partner. They laughed, cooked, talked about the future. Everything seemed fine. But the next morning, May 20, she was alone in the apartment. What happened that night, no one will ever truly know. No surveillance. No recordings. No final phone calls. Only silence and 2 letters. One legal. One emotional. What we do know is this. On that day, Lucy Gordon ended her inner battle. Not against someone else, but against the weight of her own expectations. Against the quiet feeling that even success couldn't fill the emptiness she carried. It was a choice that left her parents, her partner, her fans, and the entire film community in stunned disbelief. Because if someone like Lucy Gordon, who seemed to have everything. I saw no way forward. What did we all fail to see? What are we to make of Lucy Gordon's story? On one hand, she was a promise, a rising actress with international charm, intelligence, and extraordinary sensitivity. She appeared in major films, worked across 3 countries, and impressed directors with her dedication. On the other hand, she remained in the shadows. Not because she lacked talent, but perhaps because she didn't shout loud enough in a world that only listens to volume. In our view, Lucy Gordon was one of those rare artists who didn't live for fame, but for meaning. She wasn't seeking the spotlight, but depth, and maybe that's exactly why she remained misunderstood. And her death is a tragedy. Yes, but it's also a mirror for an industry that still struggles to protect its most sensitive voices, for a public that sometimes pays more attention to gossip than to truth. Lucy wasn't alone. We think of Caroline Flack, another woman whose silence became her final message, as headlines attacked from all sides, of Peaches Geldof, who smiled in front of the cameras, yet battled demons no one saw, and of countless young actresses who were never allowed to just be human but only icons. But Lucy's story is unique in its quietness. There was no scandal, no public downfall, only a disappearance and a letter full of love. Perhaps that's what makes it hurt the most. That someone so gentle, so thoughtful, could choose to leave her own story without ever screaming for help. What might have happened if someone had asked just one more question? If someone had said, "Are you really okay?" Not just, "You look great." We believe stories like this need to be told, not to sensationalize, but to understand, to show that behind every image on a screen, there's a beating heart, sometimes fragile, sometimes quiet, but always real. What do you think? Could Lucy Gordon have been saved? Was this personal struggle or a reflection of a system that praises talent but forgets the human behind it? Tell us what you think. Your voice matters just like hers once did. Some stories slowly fade away, and some continue to whisper long after the final scene has ended. The story of Lucy Gordon belongs to the latter. Not a celebrity surrounded by scandal, not a rebellious icon, but a quiet force, a tender soul who fought her inner battles behind the scenes. She came, she shined, and she left. Not with noise, but with a whisper. And maybe that's exactly why her story lingers so deeply. We remember her as the young woman from Spider-Man 3, as the mesmerizing Jane Birkin, and as the girl who left Oxford with a dream in her suitcase, a dream that took her to Paris and ended in silence. In her final letters, there was no bitterness, no anger, only gratitude, love, and one last wish: to be remembered as she truly was, pure, devoted, and real. Today, we remember Lucy, not for her fame, but for her humanity, because she reminds us that even the brightest smiles can hide sorrow, and that behind every face we admire, there's a heart quietly asking to be understood. Some stories were never told, but now, hers, and a story that doesn't deserve a full stop, but an echo that lingers in the silence, in the memory, in every scene where she still lives quietly, beautifully, eternally,